love that new intro. All right, good evening, everyone. I have not hosted Reading, Writing, and Ralph in a while, and I am glad to be back. Tonight's episode is with, of course, Ralph Peluso himself, and we will be exploring DC's metro system with author Michelle Goldchain. First of all, awesome last name. I love saying it. So she and Ralph will be discussing her book, DC by Metro, A History and Guide. As always, there is trivia for a chance to win a copy of Michelle's book, so get your keyboards ready and let's welcome Ralph. Hello, how are you?
Hello, Grace. How are you?
I'm good. It's good to see you. It's been a while, for me anyway.
Yeah, uh, thank you. That is quite an intro. I love it too. We aired it for the first time 2 weeks ago. It's just fabulous. They've done a nice job. And, Susan's, who's ever doing that work, I think it was Susan, did a great job. Fun. And, yeah, tonight I'm excited about Michelle's book. It's a fabulous guide. And I went through it, and it's got all sorts of great information and things about the metro and the areas that you wouldn't think of. And so let's bring on Michelle and get her chatting up her book. Hi, Michelle. How are you?
Doing well. It's an honor to be here.
Oh, we love to have authors on, and we're glad you could make it and come and talk about DC by Metro. Um, and I was flipping through your book, going through some of the areas I recognize and reading about them, and then I started to think. So we're going to start to. That's that's a danger when I start to think. um, that we're going to offer to the viewers, the person that's been on the most metro systems or subway systems or light rail systems, either in the U.S. or in any international city that counts. Whatever, whichever, or whomever can type in the comments the most metro systems you've been in. So whether you've been in 5 or 10 or 20 or 30 across the globe, type a number in, and we'll get you a copy of, or not a copy, some trinket from the zebra, either a sleeve of golf balls or a mug or something. So we'll figure that out. But so anyway, my number, by the way, is 17. I've been on 17 different subway systems across the country and the world. So I wish I had a guidebook like this when I was there in those cities. So Michelle, tell the viewers about yourself. What's your background? Where are you from? Are you native DC? Education, your career, what you do for a living, and how you got into writing such a good guidebook.
Yeah. So I was born in DC, but I was raised in Woodbridge, Virginia. My background is a local journalist. I used to work for Vox Media as editor of Curb DC, where I wrote about housing and development in the DC area. Currently, I work for Washington City Paper as their audience growth and engagement editor, which is another way of saying I'm their social media manager, and I occasionally do some reporting for them. I also have been the social media manager of and photographer slash videographer for Fabio Trabocchi restaurants here in DC. And you've maybe seen my bylines in a bunch of other newspapers and magazines, including Washingtonian, DCist, Washington Business Journal, Education Week, Greater Washington, and technically DC. I'm also an artist. I've been in a few DC galleries, including Bloom Bar's Gallery O on H, the Pepco Edison Place Gallery, among other galleries in the U.S. And I also work as the creator, host, and co-writer of an offbeat, surreal art explainer show called Art Explained on YouTube. So yeah, I do a
Wow,
whole bunch of stuff.
you're really busy. Now, what's your media that you show in the gallery? Is it photographs or is it paintings?
uh, photographs mostly.
Okay. And what do you like to photograph?
Um, it used to be street photography, but my background, my focus recently has been event photography. So I've worked for the Torpedo Factory Art Center in Alexandria, taking
Oh,
photos of their events and for other. Yeah, there it is. That's the photo that I took, and also that's the Torpedo Factory Art Center here in Alexandria, where I live currently.
yes. I live very close. I was about 8 blocks from the torpedo factory when I lived in Alexandria. It's a great place to go. It's a lot of fun. So how do you go from that to writing DC by Metro, which is is a thick work. It obviously takes a lot of time and research and a lot of great photos in there. Did you take those photos, by the way?
Yeah, all the photos in the book are by me.
Yeah. Oh wow. Okay.
And I was inspired. I was initially inspired to write this book because of a former coworker of mine. She wrote the book Subway Adventure Guide. She was the former Curb New York reporter and the current content strategist at the MTA. Her name is Amy Plitt. And her book was kind of similar to what I eventually wrote, which is that she took a look at the subway stops in New York and what was nearby and notable. And I thought that's such a brilliant idea to make a guidebook that is divided by the subway stops. So I thought it was wonderful, and I thought I would dive in and do my own version for Washington, D.C. And my hope with this work was that it would kind of change people's minds. And by minds I mean people who say things like there's nothing to do in DC, or worse yet, when people say things like I hate DC. I wanted to make a book that could show people that there's so many cool things around us, so many buildings that you might pass by and not realize the amount of history and wonderful stories that they can tell.
Wow. Yeah, DC is, yeah, it's obviously the capital city, and there's a lot here, a lot more than I think people realize. Now, I grew up in New York City, and by age 8 or 9, we were already traveling around the subway system in New York, and and you grow tremendous familiarity with traveling by subway, and so I have to look that book up that you just told me about that she wrote about New York, because that would be interesting to read. So anyway, um, tell the readers, or explain to the readers a little bit about the history of the DC Metro system. Um,
Sure. So I would
how-
say that if anyone wants a really deep dive into the history of the Metro, I would recommend Zachary Schraig's 2006 publication, The Great Society Subway. It was published by the Johns Hopkins University Press, and Zachary is a professor at George Mason University. But to try, in my attempt to summarize uh, what he's researched and written, the Metro first opened in 1976. It currently has 6 lines and 91 stations. When it did first open, that initial core of the Metro rail system involved the 5 red line stations between Rhode Island Avenue and Farragut North. And it was in these first few years that the Metro really started to expand really rapidly. By 1979, there were 38 stations, and then 54 stations in 1984, and eventually we reached 91 stations in July of 2014. And soon enough, we're going to have another station added on, the Potomac Yard Metro Station, here in Alexandria, which I think is supposed to open next year.
Wow. It's kind of interesting how it's grown. It's obviously the some of the other cities, the metro seems like has been there for 100 years. In the case of New York and probably Boston and Chicago. But anyway, so I want to give the first trivia question. So we have 3 trivia questions about the DC Metro system. The person who submits the first correct answer will win a copy of DC Metro Guide, autographed by Michelle. So anyway, the first question is, how many miles is the length of the entire DC Metro system? So how many miles is the length of the entire DC Metro system? And we'll, if we don't have an exact correct answer within 5 or 10 minutes, then we'll give the prize to the person who was closest. So the closest guess will win. So when I think about metro systems, because since I grew up in New York, they were old, they were clunky, they were noisy, they never ran on time. But I remember the first time getting onto the DC metro system, and people were commenting it was based on the European design. It was beautiful. It was quiet. So what are your thoughts and experiences when it comes to that?
My thoughts and experiences when it comes to the unreliability.
The riding older subway systems and riding the DC metro system.
Ah, yes. So I have been on not 17 subway systems like you. That is an impressive number, I gotta say. I have been on Boston's subway system, New York's, of course, DC's, obviously. And when I think what makes it interesting is that with the New York subway, under ordinary circumstances, almost every station is always open. The New York subway system, it operates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. I know that the metro here in DC has been slowly expanding their hours, but it's still at a point where it's a little difficult for, let's say, like restaurant workers and other kinds of workers to once their shift ends, sometimes our glorious railway system might not be available to them. So I think that's one way that if we're looking at, if we're comparing the DC metro to another metro system, that's one way that we kind of suffer. And then another thing that is worth noting is the price of the DC metro. I read in Washington City Paper's latest issue, which was about, the metro by the numbers, taking a numerical look at what the metro does well and may not do well. And I learned that DC is the most expensive of the 10 top US metro systems by ridership, participating in weekly pass programs. So if we want a weekly pass for the metro, we would have to pay $58. But in New York, an unlimited 7-day pass on the subway costs only $33, which is a bummer. But I mean, there are things about the DC Metro that I can say are awesome. I mean, I love the design of it. The Chicago-based architect Harry Weiss did such a great job making something that's truly timeless. In 2014, the American Institute of Architects awarded the DC Metro something called the 25-Year Award, which basically means that the design is still awesome even 25 years later. Which just goes to show that it's it's still, there are still silver linings, even though I know that there are ways that the metro could improve, and I know that Paul Wiedefeld knows that too. So
it's kind of a work in progress, unlike some of the other subway systems. Anyway, we have a winner already. That was quick. So where's Grace?
Yeah, that was quick. One of our usuals, the Gorskys, they were correct with 117 miles.
Fabulous. Nancy and John are quite the trivia players. we have a team here where I live, and we're on the same trivia team, and we win more often than we lose, I think. So it's quite a. So what's your favorite place to visit? Um, that's off the beaten path on the subway system that people don't realize is there, and it's really a gem.
Hmm. A historic gem. So,
Any gem.
okay, well, any gem. All right. It's hard to pick a favorite. But I think one hidden gem that I think people might really enjoy is that um, there is a memorial statue in Tacoma near the metro for a rooster named Roscoe. For 10 years, starting in 1989, there was this rooster that kind of became the town mascot. And after the bird, unfortunately, um, uh, ex- was the victim of a hit and run, the community came together to commission an artist to install a statue in its likeness. And they even held a eulogy with like 30 or so mourners. And I read in the Tacoma Voice that the eulogy read, "With each crow, he reconnected us, however briefly, to a world more sane and simple."
Wow,
I think it's beautiful.
that's
And then,
interesting. Most people wouldn't realize that. And if you're a tourist, you'd probably pick up the thing and say, "Oh, look, there's this memorial to this rooster. Let's go visit it." How would you know? That's very cute. There are places on the Metro line that are just phenomenal to visit. What's your favorite um, museum that's right on the Metro line that you love to go to, other than the Smithsonian? So let's take the Smithsonian off the table.
you say other than the Smithsonian, but there's one Smithsonian museum that most people, I think, don't think about as much as they should, which is the Anacostia Community Museum.
Oh,
It opened in 1967, and it was the first federally funded community museum in the nation. It's located in Anacostia, of course, and it has a focus that is on issues that impact contemporary urban communities. Right now, they're doing this exhibition on food and food deserts and things like that. Um, but if I were to consider uh, a non Smithsonian museum, I would say that the Phillips Collection is a great museum that people should really check out. It's near Dupont Circle, and it opened in 1921 as America's first museum of modern art. You can find works by Renoir, Rothko, O'Keeffe, and Monet. And it was headed by a man named Duncan Phillips, who was at the time when he opened this museum, he was one of the foremost collectors in the country. So, and another museum that people should really check out is also near Dupont. It's the Hurric House Museum. It is also known as the Brewmaster's Castle because it was once the residence of DC's wealthiest and most distinguished brewmaster, Christian Hurric. He was a German immigrant who owned the Christian Hurric Lager Beer Company. At the time, he was the DC's second largest landowner and largest non-governmental employee. And when he died at the age of 102, he was also the world's oldest brewer. Today, if you go to the Brewmaster's Castle, you're going to find the Hurric House Foundation, and they like to host a lot of beer events, which are pretty fun. And then they take you through a tour of the museum itself, and you get to see uh, like period furniture, things like that. So it's a great museum to go to if you want
well,
to do something different.
yeah, I've been to the first one, the Duncan Phillips. I haven't been to that one, so maybe it'd be next on the list. I'm gonna give the viewers our second trivia question. So again, first one in, right answer. Um, It's DC Metro related. What event caused the single largest one-day ridership on the DC Metro system? What event caused the largest one-day DC Metro ridership? So first one in with that answer, and again, an autographed copy of Michelle Goldchain's DC by Metro. What if I said to you, what place comes to mind that people do not realize they can get to on the DC Metro system easy? What would that be?
Hmm. What place or like a
Yeah.
site?
A site. Yeah. So you say, let's go visit, and they say, oh, it's too hard to get to, and then you say, it's on the DC Metro system.
Hmm. What place? I think a place that people should check out if they are looking for another hidden gem, you know, is the Anacostia Big Chair. It's 19 and a half feet tall, and when it was built, it was the largest chair in the U.S. It was commissioned by the DC-based company Curtis Brothers Furniture as a way to have a display outside their showroom in Anacostia. Um, the original chair was actually removed in August of 2005. So this is actually an aluminum replica, but it's still a curious sight, I must say, to see such a gigantic, one of the largest chairs in the world in DC itself. Oh,
Yeah.
and
It's
I think another good, another another hidden gem, a place that people might not realize that they can just check out, is by the Prince George's Plaza Metro. There's this art house called the Vanidoo Art House, and it's this residence that's filled to the brim with antiques and historical objects and mosaics. And this car that you see here is parked outside the house. The house was created, or I should say, the antiques and the historical objects were put together by a museum conservator named Clark Bedford, and he embellished this car with like moose antlers and vases. I think the house completed around the year 2007. Um, so it's a funny sight, that's for sure. Just like the chair.
yeah, that's good. I never think of going to Anacostia by subway, but there's a lot being redeveloped in Anacostia, so it's really becoming, like I said, quite a good place to go to. We have another winner, so that's quick. Folks are on these tonight.
Yeah, that one was a very quick one. I think the fastest I've ever seen. And the winner was Irene Wittig with the answer, the Obama inauguration.
Irene, great! It's good to see Irene on. She was on our show. She's quite the author. She's written some very good stuff. Um, we love when people come back on after they've been on the show and contribute, and it helps everyone out. It helps promote the show. It helps promote the authors. We just love it. We've got a nice community in Alexandria. So the other thing when I think about places on the metro is, what are the good food places to go to that are easy to get to on the metro? Give us some of your favorites.
So it's hard to choose a few favorites because there are so many great restaurants in DC.
I know.
But a few favorites of mine include Thip Cow, which is a Laotian restaurant near the Columbia Heights Metro. Zaytania, which is Chef Jose Andres's Mediterranean restaurant near the Chinatown Metro. You can't leave out Ben's Chili Bowl near U Street Metro. Uh, it's a classic, and I actually included it in my book. There aren't too many restaurants that I included in my book, but this one I just couldn't leave off. And I think there's this near the Dupont Circle Metro. There's this French uh, cafe and dessert shop called Un Je ne sais quoi, which is also super great, and it's just like across the street from the metro itself. Um, and I think another good one to mention would be Union Market near the Noma Gallaudet U metro station. It's one of the best food halls in the country, I think, personally.
Wow.
Um, and yeah, I mean, yeah, why not?
There's so many great restaurants you can get to on the metro. There's so many great restaurants in DC. Yet a couple of my favorites that are on the metro line are Clyde's in right near Chinatown, one of my favorites. And Roseanne's, which is over on Capitol Hill section. So they're terrific restaurants. And again, having a guidebook like this and where to eat is are fun. Let me get to the third question. Then I'm going to ask you, which are the most impressive of the stations of the stations on the metro system? So the third question, which of the DC metro lines is the longest? So again, which and the lines are red, orange, yellow, blue, silver, and green. So which of the metro lines is the longest? So Michelle, which do you consider the most impressive station? And maybe there's not one, but when you walk into the station, you say, "Gosh, look at this architecture! Look at the length of this escalator! Look at what I come out to when I come up from underneath." Um,
Yeah, I knew you were gonna ask me this question, and it took me a while to come up with an answer because I agree that there isn't just one impressive metro station. But if I were to say one, if I had to, I would like to mention the Dupont Circle metro station, just because I love that it has the Walt Whitman poem there on the north exit, and I love the Dupont Circle fountain. Um, you know, uh, Originally the Dupont Circle was actually known as Pacific Circle, and it actually used to have a statue of Rear Admiral Samuel Francis Dupont,
right.
which the circle is named after. That statue, which is no longer there, of course, was installed in 1884, but it was super unpopular, to be honest. There was this article that I read from the Washington Times that called it an eyesore and rather awkward looking. So the family decided to push towards replacing the statue with a fountain instead. And the fountain that we see there today was designed by Henry Bacon, who people might know as the architect behind the Lincoln Memorial. And then the sculptor behind the uh, statues was Daniel Chester French, who was behind the statue of the Abraham Lincoln in the Lincoln Memorial. And these two were hired to create that two-tiered marble fountain. Um, and the fountain wasn't dedicated until 1921. And the statue that we used to have is now in Wilmington, Delaware.
Oh wow,
So, yeah.
I have to go up and visit it sometime. Yeah, there are so many impressive stations. I think coming up on Dupont Circle is fabulous. I Farragut North is an impressive station when you come out of that one. Um, even
Did you know? Oh,
yeah,
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I was going to say, did you know that the Wheaton metro station has the longest single span set of escalators in the Western Hemisphere? It's
um,
230 feet.
I think I read that someplace. It might have been in your book. Yes, I haven't been to the Wheaton station, but yes, that's got to become impressive coming up that escalator from Wheaton. But there's so many great stops that when you come out of. I like coming out of the one at the ballpark. Um,
Mhm.
you come out and you see the ballpark. It's just a fabulous view. I'm a baseball fan, so I just love that. Love that when we see it. There we go. We're looking at the ballpark there. So, what 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 is your favorite stop that might be unknown to others other than Dupont, right?
Hmm.
We say when you go there, it's just one of your favorite places to visit.
You know, I wouldn't say Anacostia is unknown, but I would say it's undervisited by tourists. We were just talking about it earlier. And, I think Anacostia has a ton of great historical sites worth visiting, such as the Frederick Douglass National Historic Site. It's the former home of Frederick Douglass, and he lived in it from 1877 until his death in 1895. And it's been preserved for public tours. But people can also go to the Anacostia Community Museum, which opened in 1967. Again, I mentioned it earlier. And then, of course, there's the Anacostia Art Center, which is an incubator for art and new businesses. They have a black box theater, they have galleries, they have boutique spaces and a cafe. So I would highly recommend the Anacostia Art Center. And then, if anyone is looking for a breath of fresh air, check out Anacostia Park. They also allow for roller skating at Anacostia Park Pavilion. So I think Anacostia has a ton of stuff that people should definitely check out.
Now, is all of this Renaissance in Anacostia taking place because the metro was built there, or is it a combination of other things?
I think it's a combination. I can't recall when the Anacostia metro station was built, but I would say that the entirety of the city has been, going under redevelopment uh, for decades now. I mean, DC is constantly changing. When I had to write about housing and development in the city, I had to write 5 articles a day for Curb DC, and I have to tell you that sometimes I wasn't able to write about everything because there's so many things. There are constantly construction cranes everywhere, and it's just a city that's it's always on the move.
Right. Yeah, the neighborhoods have been changing since I've been there. Um, as I said, I moved there in 1976, and we used to be able to park across the street from the building, our office building where we worked. And that was long ago and far away. But we've seen the redevelopment of all the neighborhoods. And Anacostia, is never, when I was there, was never on anybody's radar screen. But now it seems to be. There seems to be a lot more going on, and a lot of it might be driven by the metro. It's not too far from the ballpark. Um, just a lot of good things going on there. So, what else would you like to add about the DC metro system that we haven't talked about?
Hmm. I think another semi-hidden gem that people should definitely check out is the Franciscan Monastery. So it's near the Brookland station. It's not too far, and it has one of the reasons why it's kind of unique in DC is how it has a replica of the catacombs in Rome. It's a 48 the entire structure, the entire monastery is a 44-acre complex, dedicated in September 1899. um, and it just has these beautiful gardens, and if you're looking for just some natural place to just do something new, then check go to Brookland, and just right down the street, not even a 5-minute walk, is the Basilica, which is a beautiful, huge church. That if you're ever near Brookland, you can spot it from afar.
Yeah, that's worth the trip between those two things. The basilica is awesome. And I've never been to the Franciscan Monastery, but I think maybe I'll have to visit that if I ever go back and spend a few days in DC. There's a lot to do in DC. A lot to do. So what's next for Michelle? Are you looking to do another guidebook?
Well, it's hard to say because, there's so much I like to do. I'm a freelance event photographer. I'm still doing my YouTube show, which I mentioned earlier, Art Explained. And I'm happy to have joined Washington City Paper's team this past June. So it's been a blast to be able to work with such fantastic journalists. So everyone should check out Washington City Paper. And if anyone wants to connect with me, I'm on Twitter at GoldchainAM. Or you can learn more about me at michellegoldchain.com.
That's great. That's great. And where could people get your book?
Oh, yeah, either your local bookstore or Amazon.
Okay. And they just type in your name and DC by Metro.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. I can't believe we haven't had. There's only 6 guesses on the colors there. We haven't had anybody get the right one yet, but that's okay. So, one last thought to leave the viewers about the Metro system. Right? What is the one thing you don't like about it?
The one thing about the Metro, that's hard. I guess if I were to add just one last thing, I would say there are 29 stations in the DC Metro with art in them. They include Chinatown, Tyson's Corner, Tacoma. It's part of the DC Metro's Art and Transit program. So the next time you're in a metro station, maybe just kind of look around. Maybe you'll find some beautiful art that you may not expect otherwise. But yeah.
Wow, great. Anyway, well, thanks for coming on. We appreciate the effort to put the book together. We hope it sells widely and entertains a lot of people, and people visit DC and get on the Metro system.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
No problem.
All right, thank you both. I can't believe that we didn't get that the last trivia question answered. The first 2 were answered so quickly, but
someone just came in with it. I see the answer came in. Mark Toon.
Oh, all right, there we go. No time like the present. Mark Toon, the red line. That is correct. That is the longest line in the Metro system.
Fabulous. Well, thank you again, Michelle. It was wonderful hearing about the Metro system and all your insights into it. And I tell you what, I learned more about Anacostia tonight and in the book than I thought I ever would. It's great. It's great to see that when communities rebound. And in no, it might not be 2 weeks. I don't have my calendar in front of me. I think the next guest we have on is I can't remember. I'm drawing a blank.
Well, we can. It will be shared on Zebra. Susan will plug the show, and the preview will go out before the evening of the show. So everyone, keep your calendars open and stay tuned on Facebook for upcoming ZTV evenings. They happen Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at 7 o'clock on Facebook. So tune in tomorrow and Thursday for the rest of this week's show. And until then, be the good news in someone's life.